Blind date disaster. The rich woman found herself falling for the mechanic's single dad who fixed her car. Rain poured like the sky was mourning something. The streets of the small town were nearly empty, save for a single, sleek, black sedan parked under a broken street lamp. Inside, Elise Winters, a tall blonde woman in a cream silk blouse and heels now caked in mud, slammed her phone against the passenger seat. "He did not just stand me up," she muttered, her voice trembling between rage and disbelief. The blind date had been her best friend's idea. "You need to stop dating executives," Jamie had said. "Try something different, a small-town guy, nice, grounded." Elise had reluctantly agreed, driving 2 hours to this quiet town for what was supposed to be a refreshing change. Now, she was alone in the parking lot of a diner that had closed 30 minutes ago, mascara streaking her cheeks as the rain refused to let up. She turned the ignition again. Nothing. The engine gave a tired whine and died. "Of course," she snapped, hitting the steering wheel. Her phone was dead. Her charger had stopped working. No signal out here, even if it had not. The perfect disaster. With a shaky breath, Elise pushed the car door open. The rain instantly soaked through her blouse as her heels sank into the mud. She stepped out, slipping, catching herself on the side mirror. Her once perfect hair clung to her face. She screamed into the emptiness. "I hate this town." A distant rumble came, not thunder, but tires on gravel. A rusted old pickup truck rolled into view. The headlights cut through the rain, slowing as it approached her car. "No, no, no, no," Elise whispered, backing away. "I am not some helpless damsel." The truck came to a stop beside her. The driver's door opened, and out stepped a tall man in his 30s, wearing oil-stained jeans, a flannel shirt rolled up at the sleeves, and a mechanic's name tag. Jake. Cradled in one arm was a small girl, no older than 6, asleep with her cheek pressed against his shoulder, a pink stuffed bunny dangling from her hand. Jake took one look at Elise, then gently shifted his daughter so she rested against his chest. His eyes, kind, steady, met Elise's furious ones. "Car trouble?" he asked, voice low and calm. "I do not need help," Elise snapped, hugging herself, rain dripping from her chin. "I'm fine." Jake looked her up and down, the soaked silk, the trembling hands, the cracked heels. He stepped forward, careful not to wake the child. "I do not leave people crying in the rain," he said gently, "no matter what kind of car they drive." For a moment, the only sound was the rain hitting metal. Elise opened her mouth to argue, but nothing came out. Her pride deflated like a torn umbrella. She looked down at herself, cold, wet, alone, and suddenly she was just tired. Jake tilted his head toward the passenger side of his truck. "Hop in. It's warm. I've got some juice boxes too." Her voice broke as she asked, "Who are you?" "Just someone who saw a woman who deserved better than to be left behind." And, before she could stop herself, Elise moved toward the truck. Jake drove slowly through the sleepy town, the windshield wipers creaking back and forth in a steady rhythm. Elise sat in the passenger seat, arms crossed tightly across her chest, trying to warm herself. She glanced sideways at the little girl sleeping soundly against Jake's chest, her damp curls stuck to her forehead. "She's your daughter?" Elise asked quietly. "Yeah," Jake replied, his voice gentle as always. "Anna. She's 6. Got more sass than a thunderstorm and a smile that could melt steel." Elise smiled despite herself. They passed the dim lights of a gas station and turned onto a quieter road, lined with aging houses and mailboxes leaning at odd angles. Her heart sank. "I should probably call roadside assistance," she said, fishing into her soaked purse, "or at least a hotel." Jake glanced at her. "Phone still dead?" She looked down. The screen was black. Completely. "There's no hotel in town. Closest one's 40 minutes out," Jake said, turning into a gravel driveway. "But you're welcome to crash at my place. It's nothing fancy, but it's dry. warm, safe. She hesitated. She had never accepted help from strangers, especially not ones who drove rusty trucks and lived in houses with peeling paint. But tonight, her options were limited, and something about the quiet strength in Jake's voice made her feel oddly safe. Jake parked the truck and gently carried Anna inside. Elise followed, her heels clicking awkwardly against the wooden porch. The house smelled like fresh pine and cinnamon. A small living room opened into a kitchen, modest but cozy, worn but loved. Children's drawings were pinned to the fridge. A tiny pink raincoat hung by the door. "You can take the bed," Jake said, nodding down the hallway. "It's clean. Sheets are fresh. I'll take the couch with Anna." Elise's eyes widened. "You don't have to." He shook his head. "I insist." She watched as he laid Anna down on the couch, pulling a fleece blanket up to her chin. The girl stirred but did not wake. Jake crouched beside her, brushing a strand of hair from her face with a tenderness that caught Elise off guard. Elise slipped into the bedroom and closed the door halfway. She changed into one of Jake's oversized t-shirts he had offered without a second thought, her designer clothes still dripping wet in the bathroom sink. Later that night, unable to sleep, she tiptoed quietly into the hallway. The house was still, the rain now soft against the roof. She paused by the living room doorway. There he was. Jake sat on the floor beside the couch, one hand on his daughter's tiny back, watching her breathe. His eyes were soft, his posture protective, unmoving. Then she heard it, his whisper, low and reverent. "Mommy's in the sky, baby girl. But she told me to always keep you warm. Always." Elise froze, her heart cracking open in silence. Something in that moment, his words, the way his voice trembled, the way he looked at his daughter like she was the entire universe, softened her. Not pity, not curiosity, just something deeply human. She turned quietly back toward the bedroom, eyes stinging with emotion. She had come to town for a blind date. Instead, she had stumbled into a home built on quiet love and sacrifice, and somehow it felt far more real than any penthouse or polished conversation she had ever known. Morning light filtered through the curtains, soft and golden, brushing over the walls of Jake's small but warm kitchen. Elise sat at the worn wooden table, sipping black coffee from a chipped mug that read "Hash-own Dad." Across the room, Jake was whistling softly as he flipped pancakes in a skillet, barefoot, sleeves rolled up, a towel slung over his shoulder. She watched as Anna, still in her unicorn pajamas, climbed onto a stool beside him. Jake handed her a slice of apple and kissed the top of her head. On the counter beside them, he was carefully pressing 2 slices of bread into a heart-shaped cutter before layering peanut butter and jelly between them. "I didn't know heart-shaped sandwiches were a thing," Elise murmured, surprised. Jake chuckled. "Well, Anna refuses to eat them if they're square. Says they don't taste like love." Anna giggled, swinging her feet. "It's true." Elise couldn't help but smile. Everything here was so different, quiet, real. She glanced down at her phone, finally charged overnight. A dozen missed calls, urgent emails from her assistant, and a message from her ex-boyfriend popped up. "We should talk. I miss us." She rolled her eyes and turned the screen off. "Work stuff?" Jake asked without looking up. "Yeah," she said, pausing. "I'm the marketing director of one of the biggest retail firms in New York. My calendar doesn't usually allow spontaneous road trips. Or," she gestured at the pancakes and heart-shaped sandwiches, "this." Jake nodded. "You seem good at what you do." "I was engaged once," she said quietly, "to a guy in finance. He left. Said I made more time for campaigns than for him." Jake set a plate in front of her, stacked with pancakes shaped like smiling faces. "I don't have a degree," he said simply. "Worked the garage since I was 16, learned with my hands. I know how to build engines, not resumes. But Anna's never gone to bed hungry, and she smiles every day. I figure I'm doing all right." Elise looked at him, at the way his eyes lit up every time Anna spoke, at the quiet strength in his hands. She had never met anyone like him. After breakfast, Anna grabbed her little backpack and walked over to Elise. "Will you walk me to the truck?" Elise smiled. "Of course." They stepped outside into the cool morning air, Jake locking the door behind them. Anna tugged on Elise's hand as they walked toward the pickup. Then the little girl looked up and asked, with innocent eyes, "Do you have kids?" Elise paused. "Me? No, I've never really thought about it." Anna tilted her head, considering that. "I wish you were my mom," she said softly. Elise stopped in her tracks, her breath caught. The words were so pure, so unexpected, they knocked the wind out of her. She looked down at Anna, at those big brown eyes that mirrored Jake's, hopeful, sincere, completely unaware of the weight they carried. Elise crouched to Anna's level, brushing a strand of hair behind the girl's ear. "That's a very sweet thing to say," she whispered, her throat tightening. "But you already have a great dad." Anna nodded. "I know. But sometimes, I think maybe a heart has space for more than one person." Elise blinked fast, her chest aching with something she could not name. For so long, she had believed love came in carefully curated packages, dinners at rooftop restaurants, bouquets delivered to offices, measured compliments. But now, kneeling in a gravel driveway next to a child, offering her heart without question, Elise realized maybe she had been looking in the wrong places all along. Maybe love tasted like peanut butter and jelly. Maybe love wore muddy sneakers and whispered wishes before school. The mechanic had said her car needed at least 3 days for a full repair. Something about a busted alternator and a part they had to order from out of town. Elise could have screamed, but she did not. Strangely, she was not in a rush anymore. Each morning, she walked to Jake's garage with Anna's tiny hand in hers. Each evening, she shared quiet dinners at his table, learned which drawer held the spoons, and even began bringing fresh fruit from the corner market, something Jake always forgot. One slow afternoon, Elise sat beside Jake on an overturned crate outside the garage, sipping iced tea while the sun dipped low over the rooftops. Jake wiped his hands with a rag and glanced over. "You miss the city?" She shrugged. "Sometimes, but it's loud, lonely, even when it's packed." Jake nodded. "I get that." After a beat, Elise said softly, "My mom died when I was 10, cancer. My dad buried himself in work after that, boarding school, nannies, lessons. I learned to smile through grief." Jake was quiet. Then he said, "My wife passed when Anna was born, complication during labor. I held Anna in one arm and signed the death certificate with the other." Their eyes met. Something raw and unspoken passed between them. "You're doing a beautiful job," Elise whispered. Jake looked down, the tip of his ear reddening. "I try." Later that week, she offered to help with his garage's branding. At first, he laughed it off. "I don't think folks around here care about logos," he said. "They will when they see your story," she replied. Together, they repainted the sign. Elise designed flyers, helped him set up a simple website. By the end of the week, business had doubled. People from 2 towns over came because they heard this place was honest. Jake was stunned. "I don't know how to thank you." Elise smiled. "Just let me make coffee tomorrow. Yours is terrible." That night, the 3 of them sat cross-legged in the living room, a board game spread across the carpet. Anna was squealing with laughter as she stole Jake's last property card. Elise, hair down, barefoot in one of Jake's old hoodies, was laughing so hard she had tears in her eyes. "Monopoly's brutal," Jake grinned. "No," Elise gasped, catching her breath. "You just hate losing to a 6-year-old. Anna threw her hands up. "I am the queen of the board." Then, as the laughter died down, Elise leaned back against the couch, her voice quieter, her smile lingering. "You know, I used to think the only man worth falling for had to have a penthouse, drive something European, wear suits that cost more than a semester at Yale. Jake raised an eyebrow, amused. But now, Elise paused. Now I find myself thinking about the way you looked at Anna when she coughed yesterday. The worry in your eyes. The way you held her for hours just to make sure she was warm. Jake returned 10 minutes later, placing a brown bag of groceries on the table. Elise stood up, trying to hide the conflict in her eyes. I have to leave, she said quickly. Jake looked up. Leave? There's a business emergency. I'm needed in the city. She paused. It's important. He nodded slowly. Right. Of course. She hesitated. I'll be back, as soon as I can. Jake forced a smile, but it didn't reach his eyes. No worries. You've got bigger places to be. Elise furrowed her brow. Jake? Then, his phone buzzed. He glanced at the screen, then looked up at her again, this time, colder. Elise Winters? He said, quietly. That's your full name, right? Yes? I just got a call from my parts supplier. He saw a post about your company on the news, said the Prescott heiress was in town, roughing it for fun. Elise's heart dropped. What? You're that Elise Winters, the only daughter of Douglas Prescott, as in Prescott Holdings. She stepped forward. Jake, I didn't hide that on purpose. But you didn't tell me either, he said sharply. Not once. You let me believe you were just normal. Like us. I am, she whispered. I was just tired of being seen for my last name. Jake looked away. Must be nice to choose when to be just a person. His words sliced deeper than he knew. I'm sorry, Elise said, voice cracking. I never meant to lie. I just liked being here, being with you, with Anna. But Jake had already turned away. I should get back to work, have a safe trip. He didn't walk her to the car, didn't say goodbye. Elise stood alone by the truck she had borrowed from a neighbor. Her bags were in the back seat. The clouds were low, gray, heavy. Just as she opened the door, a small voice called out. Elise. Anna ran across the lawn, tears streaking down her cheeks, holding something tightly in her hand. Elise bent down just as the little girl threw herself into her arms. I don't want you to go, Anna sobbed. Did I do something wrong? No, sweet girl, never, Elise choked, hugging her tightly. Anna pulled back and handed her a folded piece of paper. I made this. Elise opened it. Crayon drawings filled the page. 3 stick figures holding hands. Daddy, me, Miss Elise. And above them, a giant, pink heart. Elise's throat tightened. She tried to smile, even as her chest cracked open. I love it, she whispered, and I love you. Promise you'll come back? I promise, Elise said, voice breaking. No matter what, I will come back. She kissed Anna's forehead, held her for one last moment, then climbed into the truck with her hands shaking on the wheel. As she drove away, the drawing on the passenger seat trembled with the wind from the open window. Elise didn't wipe her tears. She let them fall freely. Because for the first time in her life, she didn't know if success was worth what she was leaving behind. The city skyline came into view like a cold, gleaming wall of steel. Elise sat in the back of the town car, watching the buildings blur past, her phone buzzing non-stop in her lap. Meetings, contracts, dinners. She had slipped back into her role like a coach she used to love, structured, polished, familiar. And yet, everything felt wrong. The Murphy deal had gone through. The board applauded. Her father nodded in approval across the table. Elise smiled, posed for photos, gave a quote to the press. But each night, when she returned to her penthouse and closed the door behind her, silence swallowed the space whole. 3 days after returning, her assistant Claire rushed into her office. You got something from that little town? From that garage guy? Elise blinked. Jake? Claire handed her a USB drive. Courier dropped it off, said it was from the camera system he never uses. Elise hesitated, then plugged it into her laptop. The footage was grainy, time-stamped 3 nights ago. Jake's garage, empty except for a silver sedan and an elderly woman standing beside it, wringing her hands. Her tire was flat, her voice barely audible through the static, trembling with worry. I don't have money, son. I was just trying to visit my husband's grave. Jake, covered in grease, smiled gently. Ma'am, you don't need money. That man was someone's dad, and you're someone's mom. That's enough. He knelt, fixed her tire, and even gave her a bottle of water before sending her on her way with a wave. She tried to hand him a crumpled $5 bill. He shook his head and said, "Let someone else help you next time. That's how it works." Elise sat motionless, hand covering her mouth. The next clip loaded automatically. It was Jake, alone in his kitchen, a small package in front of him, wrapped in pink paper with crooked tape. He scribbled something on a note, folded it, and tucked it inside the wrapping. Then he whispered, "From Mommy in the sky." He placed the gift into a small box with others, each labeled by year, each one clearly a birthday present, for Anna. Elise's hand shook. She watched him pack the box, seal it, and mark the next delivery date with a red circle on a calendar taped to the fridge. Her chest ached in places she had never known existed. She closed the laptop. For a long time she just sat there, staring out the window. The city lights were dazzling, but they meant nothing. Not compared to a grease-stained man who kept his daughter's mother's memory alive with quiet grace. She picked up her phone and called her father. "Dad," she said, "can someone else handle the Simmons account? I need to take a few days off." "You just got back," he replied, surprised. "What's going on?" "I left something behind," she whispered. "Something I should have held on to." After a pause, he said, "Is it that man? From the garage?" Elise's voice cracked. "No one has ever moved me the way he has. Not once. Not in 30 years. She ended the call and reached for her coat. In the hallway, Claire watched her boss stride past with more purpose than she had ever seen. Elise paused at the elevator, breath shallow, eyes clear. "I have to go back," she said to no one in particular. "I have to go home." The small town looked exactly as Elise remembered it. Quiet streets, rusted signs, the faint scent of pine and motor oil in the air. As the bus pulled into the station, she stepped down with nothing but a small overnight bag and her heart pounding in her chest. It was late afternoon. The sun cast long shadows across the sidewalk as she made her way toward the garage, her heels clicking softly on the pavement. This time, they were practical boots, not designer stilettos. Jake's garage came into view. Same hand-painted sign, same red pickup parked out front, but the door to the office was closed. She stood there for a second, breathing in the air like it might steady her, before gently pushing the door open. Jake was hunched over a desk, sorting through receipts. He looked up, and for a moment, just a flicker, his eyes softened. Then his expression shifted, guarded, almost unreadable. "Elise?" She smiled nervously. "Hi." He stood slowly. "Didn't expect to see you again." "I promised I'd come back," she said quietly. "I keep my promises." Jake leaned against the desk, arms crossed. Must have been a long trip down from the penthouse. She flinched, but didn't step back. "I didn't come here to argue. I came to tell you the truth." He waited, eyes unreadable. "I didn't tell you who I was because I didn't want it to matter," she said, "because for the first time in my life, I felt seen for something other than a last name or a job title." Jake didn't respond. "I was scared," she continued, her voice shaking. "Not of you, but of what it meant to care, to feel something real. It was easier to pretend I was just another woman passing through." He looked down, jaw tightening. "I'm sorry," she whispered, "for hurting you, For not trusting you enough to tell you everything." The silence between them was heavy. Then, suddenly, the office door burst open, and a familiar blur of curls and pink barreled into the room. "Miss Elise." Anna threw her arms around Elise's waist, nearly knocking the bag from her hand. "I told Daddy you'd come back," she shouted. "I told him. He said maybe you were too busy, but I knew you weren't." Elise knelt down, holding the little girl tightly. "I missed you so much," Anna said into her shoulder. "I missed you too," Elise whispered, voice thick with emotion. "Every day." Jake watched from the desk, something shifting behind his eyes. He cleared his throat, then stepped forward. "She's been asking for you every night," he said softly. "Drawings, bedtime stories. She even made space for you at the table." Elise looked up at him, tears brimming. "I don't want to force anything," she said gently. "If you tell me to leave, I will. But I came here hoping maybe there's still a place for me." Jake was quiet for a long moment. Then he exhaled, rubbed the back of his neck, and said, "I was angry, not because of who you are, but because I thought you'd left for good. And because I started to hope for something I didn't think I deserved." She stood up slowly. "You do deserve it, all of it." Another silence. Then, "Dinner's almost ready," Jake said, voice softening. "You staying?" Elise blinked back tears, smiling through them. "If you'll have me." He nodded once. "Anna," he called, "set the table. We've got a guest tonight." Anna grinned. "Not a guest. She's family." As the sun dipped lower behind the trees, Elise stepped into the warmth of the small home once more, this time not as a stranger, but as someone returning to where her heart had started to open. The new banner fluttered gently in the morning breeze. Jake's honest garage, a place built by love. The grand reopening was modest but beautiful. Elise had planned every detail herself. Hand-painted signs, fresh flower boxes outside the entrance, and a little lemonade stand run proudly by Anna in her best dress. Locals came and went, many bringing pies, hugs, and congratulations. A few even joked, didn't know fixing engines could come with a side of love story. Jake stood off to the side, arms folded, quietly taking it all in. When Elise walked over, wiping grease from his cheek, like she had done 100 times before, his eyes shimmered. "You did all this?" he asked softly. She nodded. "I wanted people to see what I see when I look at this place, at you." He lowered his gaze for a moment, then looked back at her with quiet humility. "I owe you an apology," he said, "for letting my pride get in the way, for pushing you out when all you did was care." Elise shook her head gently. "You had every right to feel what you felt, but I'm here now. No secrets, no pretenses, just me." Jake smiled, reached for her hand, and squeezed it. Later, as the sun dipped low, casting golden light over the driveway, Elise sat beside Anna on the front step. The little girl leaned her head against Elise's arm. "Do you like living here?" Anna asked, twirling a blade of grass. Elise smiled, brushing back a wisp of Anna's hair. "I've lived in the tallest buildings, had everything money could buy," she said softly, "but I never had anyone waiting for me at the door. Never had little arms hugging me just because." She paused.